Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast, episode number 227 of the show. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. This is week 8 of the quarantine mustache experiment, and growing out a little bit, I think I'm starting to look like Charles Bronson, or that might just be the influence of me binge watching all of the Death Wish movies all at once on Amazon. Either way, good to see you and hang out with you today. This week I have 4 new LitRPG reviews for you folks at home, and that's going to include Shattered Sword, a LitRPG adventure, Eternal Online, book number 1, also Biomedical Self-Engineering, book number 1, and the Emissary Bard, World of Chains, book number 3, and City of the Dead, the Alchemist, book number 1. All kinds of stories that are out this week for you guys to enjoy. But of course, before we get into any of those, we're going to go jump right into LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we just got one story here, kind of brief, kind of cute. Lavelle Jackson, author of the Tusk Blade series, has some artwork commissioned, and he showed it off this week. The artwork was done by Talimore on Fiverr. There, she illustrates fantasy characters in her own art style, all for approximately $5. So they're cute and actually interesting art style. I like them. They're interesting. We'll have a link in the show notes if you want to go avail yourself of her services to create some fun, inexpensive, artwork with your characters. Kind of a fun project for, I think, any author who likes to see his characters done in different art styles. Okay, on to stuff that is out now, stuff that's come out recently, haven't had a chance to read it, but is out for you to enjoy since the last podcast. That's going to include Gloominess +4. Also, I should have taken this off, but Biomedical Self-Engineering book, Fall Skies Challengers Call book number 5, City of the Dead, Alchemist book number 1. Out today is Spring Mutiny Space Seasons book number 2, and Animal Eye, Gamelet Adventure Animal Instincts book number 1, written by Cindy Coop, who's a LitRPG community member, so go check that out. Also out is The Mark. There you go, all kinds of stuff, and you have more LitRPG audiobooks for you to enjoy that came out recently. And that includes God's Hand, Peaks of Power, book number 2. Also Temper, an Apocalypse LitRPG series, Red Mage, book number 2 by the amazing Xander Boyce. Very entertaining series. Also out is the 3rd book in the Noobtown series, Castle of the Noobs, an entertaining LitRPG read. Also Respawn Lives, book number 1 through 5, which is a apocalyptic RPG with zombies and a respawn system, so kind of a little bit Groundhog Day-ish, where the main character resets after he dies at the beginning of this scenario. And also out for you to enjoy is Pathfinder Legends Aligned. So there you go, all kinds of stuff for you to enjoy. On to upcoming LitRPGs, just where I read off all the stuff that's coming out in the near future, as I have searched through Amazon, all the tags, Game LitRPG, to find out what's upcoming, so you can schedule your reading and your publishing, whatever you're going to use it for. On May 26th, we have a new Russian translation called Poor Cultivation, the Slayer of Heaven. Also on May 28th, it's going to be Legendary Dungeon Seed. May 29th is going to give us the 3rd book in the Ether Collapse series, a highly popular series written by Ryan DeBurn, called Earthdom. On May 31st, this one's actually out. I really should update this list. On June the 3rd, Fugitivity, The Fairy's Tale, book number 2. On June the 4th, it'll be The Good Guys, book number 9, 4 Beheadings and a Funeral. June the 9th as well is going to be Reality Benders, book number 6. June the 12th, it'll be Rise of Omniscience, book number 6, Meyer and Oster. June the 13th, The System, Multiverse, book number 1. On June the 14th, it'll be Glitch World. On June the 15th, the 2nd book in the Alchemist series called Forest of Desire by Vasily Hanko. We're reviewing, of course, book number 1 on the podcast today. On June the 26th, it'll be the 3rd book in the Space Season series called Summer Friction. June the 30th, it'll be Skyrealms Online book number 4. On June the 30th as well, it'll be Leagues of Losers, book number 1. July the 1st, it'll be Stars Asunder, the 9th book in the System Apocalypse series. July the 8th, it'll be Project Stellar, book number 2. July the 9th, it'll be Legends Online, book number 6. July the 14th, it'll be Life in Exile, book number 2. On July the 28th, it'll be Eternal Online, book number 2. Remember, we're reviewing the first book in the series on the podcast this week. And July the 31st, it'll be book 1 of Vindication 2.0. August the 8th, The Bad Guys, book number 4. August the 18th, Intellectium, book number 1. And last but not least, it'll be August 27th, Small Unit Tactics, volume 1, another Russian translation. So there we go. All kinds of new stuff coming up in the future for you guys. On to the new releases and reviews. And this week, we're going to be in the Shattered Sword, a LitRPG adventure, Eternal Online, book number 1, written by T.J. Reynolds. This is 450 pages, $2.99, available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. A broke gamer. A deadly online world. Can Dahlia level up fast enough to keep the debt collectors at bay? Dahlia has to pay off her dad's father's bills or risk her life in the lithium mines, which, no thank you. Besides, the world is run by tech, and this gamer girl is determined to explore the virtual world her father was so obsessed with and get rich while she's at it. So she sells everything and rents a premium VR pod to play Eternal Online. Even the toughest, enter the toughest realm available, check. Discover the fastest way to loot without dying, in progress. But when Dahlia finds an epic quest chain that others have overlooked, she thinks she struck gold. What she doesn't expect is to make friends with 2 deadly warriors and 1 powerful creature, or find a world boss gunning for them all. Okay. This is actually one of the auto releases I've come across. The audiobook for this novel came out months ahead of the actual ebook release. So the audiobook was out and available for ebook listeners for months and months and months, and then finally this came out recently. Additionally, when I actually finally started to read the novel, it was strangely familiar. I was like, wait, I think I've read this intro before. Like, oh, well, it's an intro. And then I kept reading, I was like, and I realized that I had read this story, a short story from the author that was supposed to be the start of a serial LitRPG series called The Broken Sword. And I realized this was likely an expanded version of that. So if you're reading it and it seems familiar to you, that's the reason why. But feel free, continue on. I think our correspondent, Ian, he actually reviewed the short story version of this, so the shorter story, The Broken Sword, and he had a great time with it. So I'll tell you what I think of the actual full story. This is a VR game story where the main character plans to pay off her inherited debt by earning transferable funds in a VR game. So it's a, gaming for work kind of thing. She gets to take with her 1 object that will be scanned into the game. She chooses her family katana. But upon entering the game, she's told by the AI her sword is too powerful for a new player and it's broken up into pieces and scattered around the game world. If she can find and reassemble all the pieces, she'll have a truly powerful weapon. There's also a subplot about her father and why he spent so much time in the game after his wife died. But the story is mostly slice of life adventure, which is perfectly cool with me. I like slice of life adventures. You follow the main character as she explores the world, fights desperately against monsters, harvests plants and animal parts, and practices her skills, all in an effort to become powerful enough to earn a living, find the missing parts of her sword, and pay off the massive debt she is in. Game mechanic wise, this is pretty standard character sheet, stats, skills, special abilities, classes, levels, quest. Nothing super, different or but everything is really in depth. It's part of the world, the game world anyways. The gathering, crafting is as interesting, at least for me, as the actual fighting. And all the game mechanics feel solid, progression-wise, and it was interesting to follow. Overall, it's a good read, even though the story has a few loose story threads, which I think is more of a consequence of it originally being planned as a serial story where you have these 1 to 150-page chunks come out at a time. I actually like it this way better, just because there's less of a lot of loose threads. I remember reading the original thinking, wow, there's a lot of starting storyline developments here, and not very many of them paid off in that initial first shorter story. And so the author essentially, I think, collected those pieces and put them together in a longer story. You get a solid story arc with a little bit of hints for larger series storylines plans, which to me is just more satisfying. in the story, the main character is not for power. Her swords goes from her life. Give her just enough of an edge to help her fight. Don't make her feel overpowered. And again, it was just as entertaining, at least for me, to read about her raising her class skills and trying to puzzle out the best plants to harvest and animals to skin to make the best profit. Just like real good logical thinking as a consequence of like the main character's situation. It felt good. So there you go. For me, gets a score of 7.8 out of 10. Almost a great score. Just a few like tiny issues like, oh, not quite. And the fact that nothing like super amazing in the game mechanic system that was like, oh, this is new and fresh and interesting and awesome. It was like, oh, this is really solid and well thought out. That's Shattered Sword, a lit RPG adventure, Eternal Online book number 1 with a really good score of 7.8 out of 10. Okay, next up is Biomedical Self-Engineering book number 1, written by John Svensson. It is 228 pages. It is $4.99. It is available on Kindle Limited. Here's the author's description. Divorced and working as a security guard in Portland, 73-year-old Carl is attacked by an unknown creature before he is able to taser it to death. After being released from the hospital, he discovers by accident that he is unwittingly acquiring DNA samples from other people he touches. He discovers a number of shocking facts about himself when a blue box appears in his right eye. Most importantly, he discovers that his health is nowhere near what he assumed it would be. Can he reverse the negative aspects of his health using these blue boxes somehow? And can he reverse his poor financial situation after his wife took half of his pension just before his retirement? Biomedical Self-Engineering is a liberty slice life adventure, following Carl as he discovers new ways of living when he is nearing the end of his own. There are no explicit scenes, no harems, and only one forward at the very end. Okay, and that's all that is very true. While the title of the story is definitely a mouthful, it does describe the power set of the main character, which is kind of an upgrade mechanic. This is a real-world literature story where the elderly main character gains upgrade powers after he fights off a monster while working as a security guard during his retirement years. When he returns home after dying, he finds that he has an interface and special points he can use to cure his arthritis, cancer, glaucoma, and the many other illnesses he hadn't even known he had. Not only that, but he can use these same points to upgrade himself. The only problem is that the number of points he has are finite, which sends him on a hunt for ways to get more and how to use his new powers to improve his life. Like many real-life liberty stories, this is a slice of life format, so you kind of have to be okay with that if you're going to enjoy this. The story, again, follows the main character as he just kind of does stuff, as he upgrades himself, as he gathers more points, as he uses his new powers to increase his wealth. There's also a small kind of underdeveloped secondary storyline with aliens and hints about the other people with similar powers. But again, I feel like that's something that's going to be explored more in other books. This one is mostly just focused on the main character, and it's like kind of understanding what his powers are and what he can do with them. There is no combat in the story besides like one brief scene, but it was still entertaining to read. It has a smart main character who's figuring out ways to kind of exploit this upgrade ability and how to get like more of these points so he can do more things and what he can do with them essentially. And it was fun to kind of think about what I would do in a similar situation, which is always kind of a fun way to connect with like these stories. The only thing I wish I had seen more of in the story was probably conflict. And I don't necessarily mean physical fights, but some kind of opposition to what the main character is doing. For the most part, he accomplishes most of what he sets out to do with very few obstacles, even kind of slowing him down. There are a couple cases, which I won't spoil for you, where there is a little bit more of a little bit more conflict. But for the most part, again, it's just one of the things that the main character has a nice power set. All that was really said very well. And he has really interesting thoughts and really interesting ways of kind of explaining it. But there, again, weren't very many challenges to him succeeding. So it feels like some of his progression, not unearned, but came a little bit easy. And I would have just enjoyed it, I don't know, seeing somebody get oppose him in some way. And again, it's kind of a minor comment. Overall, it's an entertaining story. It's an original take on the real life LitRPG premise, and it's enjoyable to read. It definitely reminds me of kind of a lesser version of the Level Up series. So if you like that Level Up series, which is the Western translation, you might like this as well. This is kind of very similar. Again, it has its own original concept and twist and premise on this, just with an older main character. And some of the genetic modifications that are happening here in the story But you'll see similarities about what they kind of do with those, with their powers in some respects. Small side note, there are a lot of like older movies mentioned in the story as like nods and just like references. And I got them all. And I was like, apparently I have the same taste in movies as a 73-year-old man. So I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. So had a good time with it. Gets a score 7.4 out of 10. That's Biomedical Self-Engineering book with the score 7.4 out of 10. Okay, next up is the Emissary Bard World of Chains book number 3 by Lars M. It is about 700 pages. I don't actually know. It doesn't say on Amazon at the time of this recording, but it's a hefty book. It is $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Double Bard in trouble. Mob will catch him in a couple. Okay, the mobsters looking for Daniel still haven't found him. That was the good news. Bad news, the net was tightening, and Daniel was running out of places to hide inside the Dawnlight Forest in the world of chains. His skills and achievements as a bard did not help avoid attention, quite the opposite, in fact. Maybe it was time to leave the forest, or maybe take the council request and search for a more long-term solution to his predicament. Okay, that doesn't tell you a whole lot of what's happening in the story. So it kind of assumes you understand the premise of the other 2 books in the series. This is another quality story from the author that combines a snarky, lovable bard main character with RPG adventure, humor, and good group dynamics. The main character deals not only with his personal development as a bard, but the town's development and the new community members he brought in for the last book. In addition to that, there's plenty of adventuring and monster fighting with good progression for all the members of his team. And the plot feels a little bit slice of life at the beginning in that it's not focused on a particular revealed goal until like later in the story, which is really fine. But I assure you all the adventures tie together by the end of the story in a good conclusion. I had a nice time with it. Yeah. Not much else to say. This is a series that I've enjoyed. Gets a score of 7.5 out of 10. The Emissary Bard World of Chains, book number 3, with a score of 7.5 out of 10. Solidly good reading. And next we have City of the Dead, The Alchemist, book number 1, written by Vasily Mahenko. It is 425 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. There are whole anthologies of stories out there about what humankind does when a game enters their world. But what about when you're living in one where a game arrived thousands of years before? What if they're the survivors of a bloody struggle, having fought for and earned their place on the planet? Talon Valshis was a young nobody far away from those grander issues. All he cared about was one thing: making his way through a harsh world where the Emperor, evil foes, and an impartial god held sway. And the god, of course, demanded nothing less than all the things were done according with its divine will. Okay, full disclosure, I received advance copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. This is a story where a fantasy world has inherited RPG mechanics. The world is so used to the RPG rules that it's become part of the culture, so much so that you can give your child bonuses by sacrificing money and lives, though there are other dark consequences to doing so. The novel description, to me at least, doesn't really do a good job of telling you what this story is about. It's a great story. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything that the author has written before. And so I'm going to give you like a little slight synopsis of kind of the beginning of the story, just to kind of tell you what it's about. After a series of tragic events, a father tries to give his last infant son an advantage in a world where stats mean everything. The main character is given a huge plus 32 bonus by his father, who sacrificed not only every gold coin he's been able to save, but also his life. The main character will grow up as an orphan, but he will have that advantage at least. Time skip to when the main character is 10 years old. He's not treated well by the town and considered a good for nothing, even though he does his best to help out. Another series of events lands the kid in several harrowing circumstances. I know I'm being intentionally vague. I don't want to spoil the plot for you. But he comes out of it with an RPG advantage that will change the course of his life. There's a lot of good world building in the story in the first half of this novel, and at about the 50% mark, you actually get a ton of action that doesn't stop until like the end of the story. Like there's a seriously like, oh, this is definitely getting more actiony. I enjoyed that personally. And of course, there are traditional Vasily Mahenko twists along the way to the end of the story. On the game mechanics side of things, there are going to be some things that are familiar here to you, and other things that are unique to this particular storyline and this particular series. The RPG mechanics in this in this world are inherently woven into the culture. I think the novel description mentions that the game world arrived on this planet thousands of years ago. So for thousands of years, the notification boxes, the stats and mechanics have all had a chance to evolve along with the cultures, and so they've inherently become part of it. So much so that people refer to the being who controls all the stats and stuff, or the notifications and quest lines, as the god, who sees all and rewards all with notifications and quests rewards. And the main character's regression in this series on a game mechanic level really kind of reminds me of the Underdog series by another Russian author, where an orphan with an inability to level gets other rewards and boosts his potential power. I'm not going to spoil exactly how that happens because this one's a little bit different than that other series. But other things in this game mechanic side, on the RPG systems that are a little more original, that are unique to the Sterling, is that spells aren't cast with magic phrases necessarily, or like inherent, class powers, but instead are cast via rechargeable cards, with a limited number of cards in a particular combat deck being available to the caster. So there's kind of a card building deck vibe to the magic system in the story, which I thought was kind of neat. The skill system and ability system is also powered by reward resources and quest rewards. And there is a social kind of law system associated with those rare resources, meaning that they're supposed to be sent to the king, and if you don't, there's a heavy death penalty associated with it. So like there are these choices the main characters to make, which that was kind of neat in making the game mechanics again inherently important to the culture and backstory and the world building of this world. So good stuff there. And again, about 50% mark into the story, you're going to see small connections to another series that the author wrote, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. See if you can figure it out on your own. Overall, it's actually a great story that I really enjoy. It. I read it in one sitting. I stayed up until like 3 a.m. To finish it off, and I had a great time with it. So it gets a score of 8 out of 10 for me. That's City of the Dead, The Alchemist, book number 1, with a score of 8 out of 10. Some great reading. Okay, that is it, folks. Thank you very much for listening, for watching. Remember, you can follow us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Patreon, on our website at literaturepodcast.com. There are other links to other literature Facebook groups where authors and readers gather and talk and joke, and you can see all the nice announcements from everybody. Remember, if you want to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, about all the ways you do so at literaturepodcast.com/support. Help keep the podcast free and ad-free and what you want from it. And until we can hang out again, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to me go on about stories that I enjoy on a weekly basis, and I hope you enjoy the reviews and you find some good books that entertain you. And until we can hang out again, remember to go read some lit RPG. Goodbye, everybody.